In this lesson, you will learn how to create a bar graph. A bar graph is a chart or diagram that displays data visually using vertical or horizontal bars. Verticals going up and down, horizontal goes side to side. So the example of these two types of bar graphs, we have the first one is a vertical bar graph. Because the bar graph goes up and down, each bar is vertical. The horizontal bar graph example has the bars going horizontally. Remember, bar graphs are a great way to organize data. The parts of a bar graph. In order to help you remember the parts of a bar graph, you can remember TAILS. T-A-I-L-S. The T will stand for title. Always make sure you have a well-worded title that makes sense for the questions that you investigated. The axis, there are two axes, the y-axis, the x-axis. Increments, I for increments, or the scale or numbers. And you want to have those properly spaced out. Make sure that you are either counting by ones, twos, fives, tens, whatever is appropriate for your bar graph. The labels, L for labels, the categories, and then S for spacing. And this serves two purposes. You want to remember not only spacing, but you also want to remember bars. So we say spacing between bars. The steps for creating a bar graph. There are 5 steps for creating a bar graph. The first step is to formulate questions to investigate. The second step is to design a data investigation to answer that question. This is when you get a chance to design your investigation. The third step is my favorite, collecting data. You can collect data by survey, a poll, questionnaire, by an experiment, or by observations. The fourth step is to organize your data. After you have collected your data, you can organize that data by constructing your graph. And finally, after you've organized your data, you may now analyze and interpret that data from your graph. So I went ahead and I want to go ahead and show you an example of constructing a bar graph. So the first step was to formulate a question. So my question is, what is your favorite sport? And of course, I had to go around and I had to decide who am I going to survey, or who am I going to ask their favorite sport. So then I had to decide which sports do I want to give them a choice of. So I chose hockey, baseball, basketball, soccer, football. I'm sure there were other sports that people had as their favorite, but these are the sports that I gave them to choose from. So this is kind of when we're designing the investigation. You're limiting the number of choices for the people that you're surveying. And then I went ahead and collected data, and this is a tally chart. So I found 3 people liked hockey, 7 people liked baseball, 7 people liked basketball, 4 people liked soccer, and 13 liked football. And the fourth step to creating a bar graph is to go ahead and construct the graph. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and drawn all of my data and put it onto here. And when I did that, I remembered TAILS. The title. I remembered my title. And it has to have a well-worded title in order to go with the data that you collected, or to go with the question that you investigated. So I'm calling mine favorite sport. And then A, TAILS, the A. I have remembered my axis. I have my y-axis, my x-axis. And then I, increments. Because of the data that I collected, I have 3, 7, 7, 4, and 13. I decided to go ahead and count by 2s. Even though some of my numbers are odd, I went ahead and counted by twos, and then you'll notice some of mine meet in the middle between 6 and 8, which makes 7. So I have my T, my A, my I, and then my L. T-A-I-L. What did L stand for? My labels. Number of people. That's how many people answered my survey for each of the sports. And then my labels here: hockey, baseball, basketball, soccer, football. So I have my categories, otherwise known as my labels, here. And finally, spacing. You want to make sure to have your bars on the graph and have a proper spacing between each so that it's easy to read. So for hockey, I pulled my bar up and I went between 2 and 4 to make it 3. For my baseball, 7 people said that they like baseball the best, so I put it between 6 and 8. Basketball has the same, so I brought the bar up to the same point. Soccer, 4 people liked soccer the best, so I brought it up to the 4. And then football had the most, between 12 and 14. Football, there were 13 people who liked football the most. Now, the last step is to analyze and interpret this data. You want to go through and make sure and double check and make sure that this data that you've collected matches your bar graph data. So hockey has 3, baseball has 7, basketball has 7, soccer has 4, football has 13. Now if I wanted to write a sentence to describe this data, I could say, of the people Mrs. Stevenson surveyed, the most chosen sport was football. I could say the least chosen sport was hockey, and I could say baseball and basketball were equally liked by the people that she surveyed. Remember, when you're analyzing and interpreting your bar graph, you want to use those visual keys to figure out the least, most, maybe what's equal, whatever your data shows you. Have fun creating your bar graphs.